September 1994. A quartet of bespectacled geeks in matching sweaters stands on an MTV soundstage that's been transformed into Arnold's Drive-In from Happy Days. They're playing Buddy Holly, and the Spike Jonze directed video is about to make them inescapable. Weezer's Blue album has already sold 1 million copies. Undone, the sweater song, has kids all over America doing the hand motions. Rivers Cuomo, the band's 24-year-old frontman, has become the unlikely face of alternative rock's nerd-friendly wave. But Cuomo isn't celebrating. While bandmates Patrick Wilson, Matt Sharp, and Brian Bell embrace their newfound success, Cuomo feels trapped. Every night on tour he performs the same cheerful pop songs while his mind drifts somewhere darker. After shows, while the band mingles with fans and industry people, Cuomo retreats to his tour bus and plays the same music over and over. Giacomo Puccini's 1904 opera Madama Butterfly. The opera tells the story of Lieutenant B.F. Pinkerton, an American naval officer who marries a Japanese girl, Seo-San, during a port visit to Nagasaki. He sees the marriage as temporary amusement. She sees it as her entire future. When Pinkerton abandons her, Butterfly waits faithfully for years, only to discover he's married an American woman. The opera ends with Butterfly taking her own life. Cuomo listens obsessively to the emotional depth, the tragedy, the raw human pain. He describes Pinkerton as an asshole American sailor similar to a touring rock star. The character becomes his mirror. Someone who causes damage without fully understanding what he's doing. The depth of emotion and sadness and tragedy inspired me to go further with my music, Cuomo would later explain. By Christmas 1994, Cuomo makes a decision. Weezer is taking a break, but more than that, he's going back to school. March 1995. Before Cuomo can fully commit to his academic plans, there's something he needs to fix. Literally. Rivers Cuomo was born with a condition that left his left leg 44 millimeters, nearly 2 inches, shorter than his right. He's lived with a subtle limp his entire life. Now, with money from the Blue album's success, he decides to undergo an experimental and excruciating procedure to correct it. The surgery involves surgically breaking his leg bone, then attaching a medieval-looking steel brace to the limb. Every day, 4 times a day, Cuomo must tighten screws on the brace to slowly stretch the bone. The process, which he compared to crucifixion, would last 13 months. Between painkiller hazes and hospital beds, Cuomo writes songs. Dark songs, angry songs, songs about physical pain and emotional isolation that have nothing to do with the sunny California pop of the Blue album. In the song that would become The Good Life, he writes about his condition with brutal honesty. Broken, beaten down, can't even get around. Without an old man cane, I fall and hit the ground. The surgery fundamentally changes Cuomo's perspective. I had this really painful surgical procedure on my leg, which lasted 13 months in all, and it took me to a place, emotionally, where the whole idea of this whole rock opera started to feel too whimsical for where I was emotionally, he told Rolling Stone in 2010. And so I scrapped the whole idea and went to a more serious and dark place. The rock opera he's referring to was Songs from the Black Hole, a space-themed concept album Cuomo had been planning as Weezer's follow-up. It was supposed to be fun, ambitious, theatrical, everything the Blue album suggested Weezer could expand into. But Payne has other plans. Fall 1995. Cuomo enrolls at Harvard University to study classical composition. He's 25 years old, walks with a cane and wears a steel brace on his leg, has grown a long beard, and wears thick glasses. Students wearing Weezer t-shirts pass him in the hallways without recognition. He auditions for the Harvard Radcliffe Collegium Musicum Chorus. He's not selected. Cuomo lives in a small dorm room, attending classes on music theory and composition while his leg slowly heals. In an essay he'd later write for Harvard, he describes the experience. I became more and more isolated. I unplugged my phone. I painted the walls and ceiling of my bedroom black and covered the windows with fiberglass insulation. The only time he can write songs is when his frozen dinner is in the microwave. The rest of the time, he's doing homework. I was quite excited. I was pretty isolated living on my own. And I couldn't drive because my leg was all jacked up. Socially, I was kind of retreating into a shell after the shock of being in the spotlight in '94, Cuomo recalled in a 2010 interview. During this period, something shifts in Cuomo's songwriting. His time at Harvard isn't providing the intellectual stimulation he'd hoped for. Instead, it's amplifying his loneliness and sexual frustration. He's surrounded by students who don't know who he is, dealing with chronic pain, missing his band, and questioning everything about his identity as an artist and a person. He receives a letter from an 18-year-old Japanese fan who writes to him in broken English. The letter captures Cuomo's imagination so completely that he writes, "Across the Sea," a song so confessional it borders on uncomfortable. I wonder what clothes you wear to school. I wonder how you decorate your room. I wonder how you touch yourself, and curse myself for being across the sea. By May 1996, Cuomo's songwriting has become, in his words, darker, more visceral and exposed, less playful. The songs from the black hole concept is officially dead. What replaces it will be named after the opera character he can't stop thinking about, Pinkerton. Weezer records Pinkerton in fragments, squeezed between Cuomo's Harvard semesters and the other band members' side projects. In August 1995, just before Cuomo leaves for Harvard, they spend 2 weeks at Electric Lady Studios in New York, tracking Why Bother, Get You, No Other One, and Tired of Sex. The songs are rough, abrasive, filled with distortion and rawness that producer Rick Ocasek, who'd given the Blue Album its polished sheen, had carefully avoided. This time there's no producer. Weezer decides to self-produce Pinkerton to better capture their live sound. It's a deliberate rejection of the glossy pop production that made them famous. During Cuomo's winter break in January 1996, the band reconvenes at Sound City Studios in Van Nuys, California for a 2-week session. They record El Scorcho and Pink Triangle before Cuomo returns to Cambridge for his spring semester. In April, during spring break, they're back at Sound City to finish The Good Life, Across the Sea, and Falling for You. Then Cuomo disappears again for finals. The album is completed in mid-1996 in Los Angeles. 2 additional tracks, I Swear It's True and Getting Up and Leaving, are recorded but ultimately abandoned before mixing. Matt Sharp, Weezer's bassist and a founding member, is increasingly pulled in another direction. He's been working on his side project, The Rentals, traveling to London multiple times to record their second album. For the final Pinkerton sessions, bassist Scott Riebling substitutes for Sharp. The tension isn't discussed, but it's there. Sharp would later describe it as a breakdown in communication. When you have a group that doesn't communicate, you're going to have a whole lot of different stories. What emerges from these fractured recording sessions is an album that feels raw and unfinished, which is exactly the point. Where the Blue Album was carefully constructed pop perfection, Pinkerton bleeds. September 23, 1996. One day before Pinkerton is scheduled to hit stores, the Pinkerton Private Investigation and Security Company, founded in 1850 and one of America's oldest detective agencies, files a temporary restraining order against Geffen Records and Weezer. The security firm alleges federal trademark infringement, claiming Weezer is trying to capitalize on their reputation. They're seeking $2 million in damages. The timing couldn't be worse. Or, depending on your perspective, it generates exactly the kind of publicity a sophomore album needs. Pinkerton wrote us saying, "Your album debuted very nicely on the charts thanks to all the free press," guitarist Brian Bell told the Toronto Star. On September 26th, Judge John G. Davies throws out the case. the restraining order is lifted. Pinkerton, the album, is free to be distributed. But there's another warning that goes largely unnoticed. In July 1996, 2 months before the album's release, Cuomo writes a letter to the Weezer fan club. It's apologetic, nervous, and remarkably self-aware. There are some lyrics on the album that you might think are mean or sexist. I will feel genuinely bad if anyone feels hurt by my lyrics, but I really wanted these songs to be an exploration of my dark side. All the parts of myself that I was either afraid or embarrassed to think about before. He continues, "You may be more willing to forgive the lyrics if you see them as passing low points in a larger story. And this album really is a story, the story of the last 2 years of my life. And as you're probably well aware, these have been 2 very weird years." Cuomo is asking for forgiveness before the album even drops. He knows what's coming. September 24th, 1996. Pinkerton debuts at number 19 on the Billboard 200, selling 47,000 copies in its first week. By comparison, the Blue Album had gone platinum within 8 months. The reviews are mixed, leaning negative. Rolling Stone critic Rob O'Connor writes, "As a songwriter, the band's singer and guitarist Rivers Cuomo takes a juvenile tack on personal relationships. Throughout Pinkerton, he pines for all the girls he can't have, the girls he can have but shouldn't, the girls who are no good for him, and the girls about whom he just isn't sure." The first single, El Scorcho, stalls on MTV. Cuomo has rejected a video treatment from Spike Jonze, the same director who made Buddy Holly a phenomenon, because he wants his feelings to come across untainted this time around. Without Jonze's visual magic, El Scorcho can't compete. The song is too musically abrasive, too lyrically awkward. Goddamn you half Japanese girls, do it to me every time. Too honest for radio programmers comfortable with the quirky geek rock of the Blue Album. Geffen Rush releases a video for The Good Life, directed by Jonathan Dayton and Valerie Ferris, using simultaneous camera angles and fractured imagery. It doesn't help. Pink Triangle, a heartbreaking song about falling for a lesbian, is released as a single but fails to chart at all. By year's end, Rolling Stone readers vote Pinkerton the 3rd worst album of 1996. Rivers Cuomo is devastated. This album was everything he had. His pain, his honesty, his refusal to repeat the formula that made him famous, and the world has rejected it. July 8, 1997. Michael Allen, 31, and her sister Carly, 29, along with their younger sister Trista, drive overnight from Denver to Salt Lake City, following Weezer on tour. The Allen sisters founded the Weezer fan club after befriending the band in their early days, before the record deal when they'd bring cookies to shows. Their membership card numbers 0001 and 002. They've helped manage publicity for the band, organized fan club meetups, and created a bridge between Weezer and their devoted followers. Weezer even wrote a song about them, Michael and Carly, released as a B-side to Undone, the Sweater Song. Somewhere on the road between Denver and Salt Lake City, their car goes off the road. All 3 sisters are killed. When the band arrives at their next tour stop and the sisters don't appear, they know something is wrong. The news reaches them on the road. Their biggest fans, their friends, are gone. Rivers Cuomo tells MTV, "I'm happy that we have this opportunity to do something. It's about all I can do. It just makes you wonder. We all love what we do, but I don't know. It scares you." On August 15, 1997, Weezer hosts a benefit concert in Los Angeles for the Allen family. Before performing Michael and Carly, the sisters' father Wayne addresses the crowd. The band is barely holding it together. It would be Matt Sharp's final performance with Weezer. The breaking point has been reached. Between the album's commercial failure, the critical rejection, the internal tensions, and now this tragedy, Weezer can't continue. After fulfilling their contractual obligations, the band goes on hiatus. In February 1998, Sharp officially leaves to focus on the rentals. Nobody talks about it publicly. Nobody processes what happened. They just stop. 1998 to 1999. Rivers Cuomo lives in an apartment under a freeway in Culver City, California. In that essay for Harvard, he describes the scene. I became more and more isolated. I unplugged my phone. I painted the walls and ceiling of my bedroom black and covered the windows with fiberglass insulation. He later tells Entertainment Weekly, "It's a hideous record. It was such a hugely painful mistake that happened in front of hundreds of thousands of people and continues to happen on a grander and grander scale and just won't go away." To Rolling Stone in 2001, he's even more brutal. "The most painful thing in my life these days is the cult around Pinkerton. It's just a sick album, sick in a diseased sort of way." But something is happening that Cuomo doesn't fully understand yet. Something that starts quietly, in dorm rooms and bedrooms, through early internet forums and file-sharing networks. Pinkerton is being discovered. Turn of the millennium. While Rivers Cuomo hides in his darkened apartment, a new generation of musicians is finding Pinkerton through Napster and internet message boards. Bands like Jimmy Eat World, Dashboard Confessional, Saves the Day, Motion City Soundtrack, and Taking Back Sunday start citing it as a major influence. They hear something in Pinkerton's raw emotional honesty that feels revolutionary. Justin Pierre of Motion City Soundtrack later tells Alternative Press, "Not only is Pinkerton my favorite Weezer album, but one of my favorite overall albums of all time. The album's confessional lyrics, distorted guitars, and willingness to be vulnerable and messy becomes the blueprint for what will be called emo, a genre that goes mainstream in the early 2000s. In 2001, Cuomo mentions to David Geffen, head of Geffen Records, that Pinkerton has turned into a real phenomenon. Geffen responds that cult phenomenon is a euphemism for failure, but the numbers don't lie. Pinkerton is certified gold in July 2001, having sold over 500,000 copies, not through MTV or radio, but through word of mouth and internet file sharing. In 2002, 6 years after Rolling Stone readers voted it the third worst album of 1996, the same publication's readers vote Pinkerton the 16th greatest album of all time. Rolling Stone itself revises its original 3-star review in 2004, awarding Pinkerton 5 out of 5 stars and inducting it into the Rolling Stone Hall of Fame. Pitchfork gives the album a perfect 10.0 in 2003 and names it the 53rd greatest album of the 1990s. The reassessment is complete, but Cuomo still can't accept it. More than a decade after Pinkerton's release, Rivers Cuomo finally makes peace with his creation. He tells Pitchfork, "Pinkerton's great. It's super deep, brave, and authentic. Listening to it, I can tell that I was really going for it when I wrote and recorded a lot of those songs." In 2010, Weezer embarks on their Memories Tour, playing both the Blue Album and Pinkerton in their entirety. Cuomo is shocked by what happens. Fans know every word, not just to El Scorcho or The Good Life, but to deep cuts like Across the Sea and Butterfly. They sing the most personal, uncomfortable lyrics back to him with the passion of people whose lives were changed by this music. "It was incredibly validating," Cuomo says. On September 16, 2016, just 8 days before its 20th anniversary, Pinkerton is certified platinum, having sold over 1 million copies in the United States. The album that was voted one of the worst of 1996 has become recognized as one of the greatest of the decade. Publications including Spin, NME, and The Guardian place it on best of all time lists. But Pinkerton's legacy extends far beyond its critical rehabilitation. It fundamentally shaped alternative music for the next 2 decades. The raw emotional honesty that Cuomo was embarrassed by became the standard for an entire generation of musicians. Dashboard Confessional's Chris Carrabba, Jimmy Eat World's Jim Adkins, and countless emo and indie rock bands built their careers on the foundation Pinkerton established. It's okay to be vulnerable, messy, confused, and desperately honest in your art. The album proved that commercial failure and artistic success aren't mutually exclusive, that sometimes the most personal, uncomfortable art takes time to find its audience, that what one generation rejects, the next might embrace as scripture. Matt Sharp, who left before he could witness Pinkerton's resurrection, filed a lawsuit against the band in 2002, claiming he deserved songwriting credit for much of the album. The lawsuit was settled out of court. Sharp and Cuomo have since reconciled, even performing together in 2004, though Sharp has made clear he wouldn't rejoin Weezer for any reunion or Hall of Fame induction. Rivers Cuomo returned to Harvard twice more, finally graduating cum laude with a Bachelor of Arts in English in June 2006, elected to Phi Beta Kappa. He proved you can be both a rock star and a Harvard graduate, just as Pinkerton proved you can create a commercial failure that changes music history. Today, Pinkerton stands as a testament to artistic courage. The courage to be vulnerable when everyone wants you to be fun. To be dark when everyone expects you to be bright. To risk everything rather than repeat a formula. Rolling Stone's revised review in 2004 by Gavin Edwards captured it perfectly. Unrealized fantasy is enough happiness for anyone, Cuomo is saying, and he sings it with enough passion to make you believe it too. The album that nearly destroyed Rivers Cuomo became the album that defined him. The failure that made him want to quit music became the blueprint for a genre. The songs he wrote in isolation, in hospital beds, in dorm rooms, in pain and loneliness, became the songs that made millions of people feel less alone. Sometimes the greatest art emerges not from triumph, but from the willingness to fail spectacularly in public. Pinkerton is proof that what looks like disaster in the moment can become legacy with time. And maybe that's the real lesson of Pinkerton. The most important art often looks like a mistake until the world catches up.